Hi, and welcome to Call a Death Doula. My name's Pamela Rathbun, and the intention of this conversation series is really just to talk about death doulas so we can know what they do for us and that we can also share with the world what we do. It's a beautiful circle of life in that sense. Today we have Melissa Wood coming to us from North Texas, and she's just going to share with us, what she does and how she got into the work, how it's changed her life, and all the good stuff. So, welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate you inviting me, and it's honored to be here to speak to all your people that are listening. And yeah, I mean, being a death doula is I always tell people it's a privilege. Most people I'm sure a lot of doulas get this. It's like, how can you do that work? And it's such beautiful work to be able to help people to not be afraid, and to help them have the end of life experience that they want. And I came to it because of my own kind of personal experience. I was born to older parents.
Okay.
So my dad was 60 and my mom was 40 when I was born.
Wow.
So in my early 20s, they both got sick at the same time and subsequently died. And I got to experience those deaths, neither one of which was good.
Mm,
And my mom had the experience of doing all the conventional treatments and nothing working and nobody telling her that she was dying. And
mm,
then, oh, we're in the hospital. It's like, oh, well, we might want to bring in hospice. And it's like, oh, it's really too late for hospice. Don't bother. And my father had Alzheimer's and lived for 10 miserable years with a horrible end of life experience. So, you go through that in your 20s and it kind of, it frames your life. I went on to work in natural medicine for a long time. I've been a naturopath for like 30 years.
okay.
And I transitioned out of that about 8 years ago into this work because I had, clients pass away, friends pass away, certainly pets pass away. And I felt called. I didn't know about doulas, and I found out about that work. Like a
Yeah.
lot of us, it's like, oh gosh, this feels better. For me, it was a shift in, hey, I need you to give me a pill or a supplement to cure me of what ails me, into, okay, I understand that I'm at the end of my life. I don't need you to heal me anymore. Can you just be there to support me?
Absolutely.
So that was a big shift for me, and it felt much better to
Mm,
that rather than the pressure of, oh, I'm dying, I need you to fix me, which, as a
right.
naturopath, you get that a lot.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this work for, well, 9 years now, and it's been very gratifying and helpful, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've learned a lot, and I've had cases that have been difficult, with a lot of people come to me because they do want to take control over their end of life experience and they don't want to go through what medical would want them to go through, so they want to hasten.
Right.
And I've had people go to Switzerland. I've had clients choose VSED. I'm working with a few right now that are going through that. So I do mostly remote work. I live in a very small town, so there's not a lot of work here. So I work with clients all over the country.
Wow.
Um, Fortunately, Zoom makes that really possible. Technology helps us out a lot. So,
Yeah. Wow. So that is so interesting. People hastening their death. And,
mhm.
tell us more about what that means.
Well, in case your audience doesn't know about VSED, that is a method that is not right for everyone. It stands for voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. And for so many people that don't qualify for MAID in this country, medical aid in dying, there's a lot of strict rules about being approved for that. There's only about 13 states now, I guess, that actually offer that are legal, but it doesn't apply to everybody. Excuse me. And one of my first cases I had was a woman who had MS. She was 65 and could have probably lived another 20 years, but didn't want to. Her health was declining pretty rapidly, and she could have been alive for a long time in bed. But that wasn't who she was, and she did not want to do that. And her family actually moved her to Texas, thinking we had made, and of course we don't, and we probably never will, unfortunately, just because of the conservativeness of this state.
Hmm.
But VSED was something she didn't want to go to Switzerland. So VSED was something that she chose. So we planned that. It was months of work to work up to that point. I had to move her out of assisted living into a private care home because you can't do VSED in assisted living facilities most of the time, at least not here.
Yeah.
That was a method. And I learned a lot about hospices at that and how they do not necessarily appreciate VSED. That was one of my first lessons into that. And now I know questions to ask. And actually, that was one of the reasons why I wrote my book was
Okay.
because of that experience. I wrote a book on how to choose the right hospice. That's actually the title.
Okay.
And that was one of the reasons because we had such a terrible experience with that hospice saying originally that they would support us and be helpful. But when it came right down to it, it got difficult.
Wow. 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 Wow.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about your book, but if you don't mind, because I have also been on a team supporting people through VSED, and it is a privilege and a beautiful experience. But if you wouldn't mind, just talk more about the process of choosing VSED and how do you know if you're ready and what is it really?
Well, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking is just that. So that would be the person, really deciding that they're not going to eat anymore, which I know for most of us that are healthy to think about not going with food is like, what? That's crazy. I can't even imagine that. But you're healthy. Of course, you don't want to do that. But as you go through a disease process and you go through treatments and you take medications, and as you approach to the end of life, sometimes your desire for food, it isn't there anymore. You don't really care about it. And certainly, if you are in a painful place, in a desperate place, and you don't really want to eat anyway, going without food in order to try to hasten things along, that can be an option for some folks. I
Mhm.
don't recommend it for everybody because there's a lot to it and it's not so easy just to stop eating. Oh, everybody thinks, well, I'll just stop on my own. And it doesn't work that way. You have to have medical support. There's medications that you're going to need. You need 24/7 caregiving the last few days. There's a lot to go into it. You can't just simply stop eating and drinking and think that's going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that for the people I've been with, the way that their physician who helps people with this, prepared them was, some, like you said, there's a lot of prep and they made a couple videos for themselves. So when they were in the process, if they were like, because, you get your mind starts to forget things and
Mhm.
because you're dehydrating, but you show them the video and then that reminded them like, oh, that's right, this is what I wanted to do. And I found with the three people I was with, it was always a peaceful process. And
Yeah.
there are medications to help with anxiety and with pain and
Yep, yep. The video is a really smart idea, not only for the person who's doing it, but also any extended family or any family around that maybe don't really understand that video explaining why they're choosing it, what they're having trouble with in their day-to-day existence, why they're making that choice, really helps the family to understand what that is. They're choosing a different death outcome than they would otherwise be. And in her case, it would have been a long drawn out one for over years of not having good dignity, and she could not tolerate that.
yeah,
Um, Once we did get medications on board and we got hospice calmed down, because I had to keep asking for more medications because she had a rough time for a few days there. And they were thinking that I was trying to get them to overdose her, which I was not doing. I merely wanted her to be comfortable.
yeah,
Once we got past that, it was okay. But there were a couple days there that was a little bit rocky. And the other thing I had to worry about, I found out after, during this process was her caregivers that were sneaking food and sneaking water in the middle of the night so that she, just because that's a natural thing for human beings to do is to offer somebody food.
right.
And
Right.
Around day 5 or 6, when your brain starts going a little bit and you start getting a little confused, and it's like, hey, do you want something to eat? Well, sure. She
Sure.
doesn't, it's midnight.
Sure.
She doesn't
Right.
remember
She's thirsty. It's
and
been a
she's
while.
thirsty.
Yeah.
So we had some problem with caregivers,
Yeah.
compliance as well.
Yeah, and that is the hard thing is that people don't understand that that length is lengthening the process
Yes.
for them to die. And the point is that they want their suffering on earth to end.
Yeah.
And so it does. I had someone mention to me that when her father was dying, here he had a stroke in the hospital and they were just offering comfort care. And they assumed that they just didn't know what that meant and it wasn't explained to them. But what that meant essentially is not giving them food or drink and allowing the body to naturally die. And so
Right.
this person thought that they were just neglecting her father and that they were being, just like, how could they do that? And when I explained to her what that was, it was like, that is absolutely the kindest thing you can do. Keep them
Hmm.
comfortable and let the body naturally die as soon as it can. Because if just a little bit of water can add time.
It can add time, it can add days,
Yeah.
sometimes start the process all over again, when the kidneys get that fluid. So, more education, and especially from medical, they're
Mhm.
not so great about talking about death and dying and explaining things to people. And, Hollywood has done a disservice. Everybody sees somebody die on TV and they think, oh, they're just going to get sick and then they'll close their eyes and the family's around them and everything's perfect. And that's a disservice because that's not really how it is. And
Yeah.
we have to educate people more. So I'm so glad you're doing these kind of videos so people can hear them and start
Yeah.
thinking about it and understanding.
Yeah, and I think also know that they have more control than they think they do over
Yes,
everything. I think the
much
death
more.
death feels very out of control because you can't stop yourself self from dying, but all the other stuff leading up to it, it can be a more pleasant experience than maybe it would otherwise be.
Well, and just having an understanding about things that might happen. As an example, I'll talk about my dad for just a minute.
Yeah.
He didn't, back in the 80s, there weren't advanced directives and living wills and all those kinds of things like we have today.
Hmm.
And he never would talk about the end of his life. And he was just one of those people that thought he was going to live forever. And of course, then you get Alzheimer's and then things shift. Well, he was in a nursing home, didn't know who I was, didn't know who he was, and had a small stroke. And he lost the ability to swallow. And the doctors came to me and said, well, we have to put in a feeding tube, a stomach tube for him. It's the only way to give him nourishment. And I was 24. I just buried my mother. Well, of course, give him a feeding tube, right? I mean, this is a natural thing. And they did tell me if I chose not to do that because I was like, well, that sounds, I don't know, what are my other options? And they said, well, there are no other options. If you don't do it, you're going to be killing him. And that was exactly what they told me.
They use that word
They
kill.
used that word. And so for somebody that was already traumatized from, dealing with my mother's illness and death to this, it's like, well, of course I don't want him to die.
Wow.
But had I known what I know now,
What did
right?
you
That
know?
that being what it is, I never would have done that. He should have not had a feeding tube because all it did was extend his life for another 5 years of miserable existence
On a feeding tube, just
on a
for,
feeding tube.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
That's,
nowadays we talk about these things with people because they need to understand if there's, dementia, then do you really want to do that? I had another case of a woman whose father had dementia. He fell and broke his hip, and they went to the hospital, and the surgeons were like, "Well, we got to do a hip replacement." And it's like, "Do we really? We have to talk about it because can he even do rehab?" He couldn't. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know who she was. So I was able to talk to her and give her like, here, these are the questions to go back and talk to
yeah.
these people about. And they ultimately finally, decided, yeah, hip replacement's not really in this man's best interest. Let's get him on hospice. Let's make him as comfortable as we can be. But the hip replacement is not going to help him have a better quality of life.
Yeah, and
So,
that is why these discussions with our loved ones are so important about talking about the reality of things.
mhm.
Reality of like, yeah, would you really want someone alive on a feeding tube? And I mean, your dad was probably out of it. Could he communicate at all or?
Correct. He not much because he didn't know who I was. I mean, he couldn't really answer many questions. I
Almost seems
mean,
like torture for him.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
to me, I'm like, yeah.
yeah.
So just accepting that we all die, right? That's the hardest part. But
Mhm.
again, you're 24 years old, your mom just dies, and then the doctors say you will kill your father if you don't do this thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully
and
it's changed
he
a
was
little.
in his 80s. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
not like he was in his 50s or something. He was
Right,
already in his
right,
80s. So
right.
yeah,
And letting go. It's hard to let go, but that compassion is
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to let go. So I can see
But the
why.
thing is, since COVID, if COVID taught us so many things about life, and it should have taught everybody how fragile things are, and
Right.
that I don't care how old you are, you need advanced directives. You need to have conversations with your people about what your wishes would be,
Mm.
because do you really want to be intubated if something like that happens again? And, I hear from people all the time that say, I don't care what they have to do, keep me alive. And my next article that I'm writing right now is going to be entitled, Yes, There Are Things Worse Than Death. Because people think that death is the absolute worst thing in the world, and it is so is not.
Yeah. Yeah. Even almost some kind of a video collage of like all the things that you
Yeah,
could be living if you choose these things.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to let go of that. Mm.
It is. It's hard for people. But th
Yeah.
that's why doulas do what we do. We educate a lot, we talk a lot, we share stories to try to help people understand and think about different scenarios that could happen, you
Right.
know?
Right. And it's okay to feel too. I think so
Yeah,
many people hold themselves
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Um, so have you worked with people who have done medical aid in dying as well?
I I have not because we
Okay.
don't have that here in Texas.
Okay.
I have had people, do consults with me to ask me about it. And then I'm able to refer them to states that would be appropriate for them if they
Yeah.
don't live in a MAID state. Vermont and Oregon both allow non-residents.
Yep.
So I've had those kind of consultations, but to actually walk that process through with somebody, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have not.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously I'm all for it. It just makes so much sense to me that we just
Yeah,
get to choose this life experience. No
yeah.
judgment, you know. So tell me more about your book about how to choose a hospice, because that's a biggie.
Yeah, it's a biggie because people don't know how to do that or that they even have the option to do that.
Mhm.
And what happens to most people is just what the same kind of thing that happened to me with my mom is, this person has a diagnosis, and in my mom's case, it was cancer. And she did the radiation, she did the chemo, but it was very clear that she was not responding to treatment, but the doctors never said anything.
Mm,
And it was always, well, we can try something else, or there could be a clinical trial coming along that could help, or, they're much more popular now than they were back in the 80s. But, it was this mentality of, well, there's always something we can do, there's always something we can try. But by the time she got really sick, when I had to call the ambulance and they had to take her to the hospital, and then it was like, okay, she's not getting any better now. I was the one that even said, is it time for hospice? Because, she's not getting better. And they were like, well, it would have been, except she's probably going to pass away in the next 3 days. So that happens a lot. It also happened to another member of my family that was not going to give up on his treatments.
mm,
And even 3 days before he passed away, came to me and said, you've got to find an herb, you've got to find some kind of plant medicine, you've got to find something that can cure me. Dying was not open for discussion, just not going to have it. And by the time, again, a crisis erupted, called the physician. Physician said, I'm sorry, it is time for hospice. Here's a name, and gave them one name. In this case, it worked out fine. But in a lot of cases, if people don't know, maybe that hospice isn't the best one in town. It just happens to be the one that the doctor knows about, or that the hospital knows about, or that the social worker is used to referring. Doesn't mean they're going to be the right one for you or your family.
Right, right.
Because what if your family's Jewish or Muslim or somebody's gay and they've referred you to a religious conservative hospice? Well, there's going to be some
Yeah,
problems.
yeah,
So, in addition to that, always getting questions from clients. Well, there's 100 in my city. How do I know which one to call or how do I even start? So it's just that combination of things. And I finally said, gosh, somebody should write a book on how to choose the right hospice and cover the myths and cover those kind of things. And I looked and there was nothing out there. So I
yeah.
decided to do it myself.
Can you tell us what does hospice do? What does it even mean?
Hospice is there at the end of life to help people to have comfort, have dignity. We're not focused any longer on curative things. So if someone has a disease process, they've got cancer, something like that, they're not going to be trying to cure that. They've determined that things aren't working any longer. And
Hmm.
it's now time to shift our focus to being comfortable, having dignity, and planning the rest, whatever time is remaining, usually 6 months, but not always. President Carter is a good example of that. He was on hospice almost 2 years. So, but it is end of life treatment, care, medication management for pain and uncomfortable symptoms. There's usually a chaplain that can come visit for any spiritual support that somebody might need. There's going to be volunteer visits, things like that. The
Yeah,
challenge,
so
oh,
they're
go
not
ahead.
there all the time,
That
right?
was my
Yeah.
next point. The challenge with hospice, and most people really have a misunderstanding about this, is my number one myth in my book is that they're going to be providing 24/7 caregiving,
Yeah. No.
and they do not.
Yeah.
A nurse might come once a week. You'll likely never see a physician unless it's a really small mom and pop kind of organization.
Mm.
Nowadays, the hospices are owned by huge corporations, and they're not going to have a doctor visit. It's going to be a nurse maybe once a week. When that person's actively dying, they're getting closer and closer to the end of life. That nurse might come 2 or 3 times a week, but
Mm.
only for an hour. The other
Sure.
23 hours of the day, that person's going to need caregiving. Most of the time, that falls to the family. Um,
Yeah.
but if
So
it
if
doesn't,
hospice isn't there that often, I'm being the devil's advocate here.
yeah,
What do they do for you? I mean, what if they're not hardly ever there?
they manage meds.
Okay.
So if the person's going to be on pain medication to manage pain or manage symptoms, they will get those medications to them, hopefully in a timely manner. If a crisis arises, that's one of my questions. How long is it going to take to get meds delivered if there's a crisis?
Hmm.
Or is there going to be a kit that they're going to leave with you and the family to help during a crisis?
Right.
That's what
So
they're
that,
going to do.
yeah. So because basically you go from your doctor that you've been seeing your whole life, who has helped you stay healthy and
Mhm.
live.
Mhm.
And now, kind of, your doctor is the hospice because you're not going to
Correct.
go into the hospital again if you get sick or if something happens. You don't
Hopefully
need to
not.
go see your doctor anymore because you're not trying to live. Hospice
Right.
is being your doctor, giving you the meds you need. And you're right, there's a chaplain, and in some hospices, right, there's some fun stuff. There's maybe a harp
Yes.
player that comes or a massage
That's
person,
right.
right?
Yep. Yep. I volunteered for hospices with doing massage because I'm a massage therapist. So
Okay.
yes, sometimes they do have massage therapists. There could be music therapy, there could be art therapy, there can be lots of fun things. Sometimes people bring pets, an animal that's been emotional support animal. It depends on the hospice. It depends on the location. Obviously, rural areas don't have those kind of resources typically, so you might find that in a bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's all about keeping that person comfortable, helping them to understand that they're going to be passing away. But in my opinion, as wonderful as hospice is from a management and a pain management perspective, they're missing a whole piece of the time that
Right.
somebody needs help processing the fact that they're dying. And the social worker can do some of that, and so can the
Right.
chaplain. But again, not a
Right.
never-ending visit. you know.
So as a doula, have you been in those situations where you help people process that
Mhm.
stuff? Right? They have
Yeah.
hospice and then you're there to help them make sense of it all, right?
Yeah, help them spend more time with them, help them handle legacy work. Like my MS person, she wanted to, it was really important to her to leave some dollars behind for animal rights and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's different. Every person is going to have a different experience. Some people don't care about any of that. They don't even want to talk about their life, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other people have things they want to do. They want to write letters to grandchildren, but now they can't write anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll do a video, or I'll interview them and find out what they want to share with their family and with their loved ones. Oftentimes, families, the persons that are dying, can't really talk to their family about it because their family, they're hurting. They don't want to lose their person, and they don't really want, they're scared. One thing about
Yeah.
watching a loved one die, it brings up your own mortality. It's like, well, I don't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
and so, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I had another doula say that she calls herself some people's last best friend. She's like,
yeah,
you know, they can tell her anything, even when you can't talk to this person who's so close to you, but they're also losing you. So there's
yeah.
just so much involved. And it also, like, do you find yourself in supporting kind of family members? We support the dying, but then the family that's surrounding them at the time sometimes needs support too.
Well, most times, and actually, I've had cases where I never had a visit with the person that was dying.
Hmm. Hmm.
She was a nurse. She had kidney failure. She knew she was going to be dying in the next couple of weeks. It was very sudden. She had kidney cancer, they found out. And she was perfectly fine with the fact that she was going to go and refused all treatments. Her
Yeah.
family, on the other hand, was completely flipped out.
Yeah.
So they were my clients, and I had conversations with the adult children who were scattered all over the country, who needed to understand why their mom wasn't going to make, any attempt to cure this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those cases are out there too, because the people leaving that are left behind, they have stuff to process. They have questions. They need understanding. And parent-adult and parent-child
Yeah.
relationships can get tricky.
Yeah. Well, and I want people to understand too that like you don't need to be dying to
Mhm.
enlist the help of a death doula. I mean,
Right.
you could go to a death doula and just say, you know what, I'm just afraid because I know my parents are going to die someday, and
Yeah.
it's freaking me out.
Yeah.
And go to a death doula. It's like a therapist in a way.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we are here to hold all things death,
Hmm.
every emotion, every regret, every angry thing you have at this person that's dying, but you're still so mad at them. Like we support the whole life experience around the threshold of death. And
Yes.
so, whether you're dying in 30 years, you still get to think about death. So, death doulas, we are here for the whole thing. We are here
Yeah.
for thinking about death, and our pets dying. And quite honestly, what I do, and I think we all can, is we have death every day in our lives. We leave
Yeah.
jobs, we lose relationships, we leave identities. I mean, those are all deaths.
Yeah.
And there's a grieving to that. And so for me, I talk a lot about those deaths too. And it's like, yeah, and we're just happen to be very comfortable talking about death. So a lot of people aren't. So people
Yeah.
hit us up whenever they're like, I need to talk about death with somebody. Who can I talk to?
Well, we're here.
That's
But
right.
the other thing too is, and I often say this, is like the sooner you can get on board with the fact that you're going to die, the better your life is going to be now.
Absolutely.
You'll leave that relationship that isn't serving you. You'll quit the job with the crazy boss. You find meaning and passion and things in your life that you want to really focus on, because every single day you are moving closer to that end.
Hmm.
And if you can really embrace that, I know that sounds like a strange word, but if you can really get on board with, God, I've got a finite amount of time here. I got to make it count, and I can make some changes in my life, and it's never too late to make changes.
Yeah.
And that's something that people at the end of their life, those regrets about gee, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time at the job and I would have spent more time with my
Yeah.
children or my family or whatever. All of that is tied into the fact that they were resisting that one day they were going to die. And if COVID taught us nothing, it was that one day could be tomorrow
Yep.
because we don't know what's coming along the pike.
Right.
And just to kind of make every day matter and count.
Yeah. And living can be scary because, as I say, living leads to death. It just
Yeah,
does.
it
And so it's
does.
like, if I do anything, I'll die. Um, yeah. Yeah. There is so much peace in acceptance.
There is. There's
Because
so
you just
much
don't
peace.
know. You just don't know. It's just like, and every day you have another day. And you hear those cliches, but it's true. I mean,
It's
every single
true.
day is another day to make a different decision if you didn't like the decision you made yesterday. And there's a lot of internal work, but the younger you are, boy, the you're saving yourself from all the work that you'd have to do if you don't wake up this early. It's like
Yeah,
wake up to it now. And you got,
yeah,
all these years, or maybe just 5 days, but I mean, those 5 days will be better than if you had.
right. And the other thing too is we just don't want, you were saying earlier about death doulas and, helping people at the end of their life. And I think you would agree with me, and probably every other doula on the planet would agree with me, is yes, we can absolutely help you in those last 3 days. But boy, those last 3 days are going to be crisis filled. If we don't have a plan, if you don't have a plan for how you want things to go, you don't have papers done, your family has no idea, you've had a major health event, and now they're coming to you and saying, "Oh, we found
Right.
this thing," and you don't have much time.
Yeah.
That's not the time.
No.
That's a hard time to get on to embrace
Make
it,
those
and
decisions
yeah,
and
you can't.
you can't.
So the sooner you can, get involved with the death doula or, start to ask some of those questions, the better,
Yeah.
because boy, it makes the ending so much easier, when some
Yeah.
of that is already done and laid out.
Yeah. So do you offer, I know for me, I offer people like 30-minute free calls just to see what I'm about. Is that something you do? Can
I
people?
don't have that available.
Okay,
I've got pretty nominal rates that I charge for
cool.
an hour. It's $50. So,
Just to call and see what you're about and see
just to
if,
call and touch base. I've got a lot of, videos and information on my site about me. I'm pretty active on social media. So I think
cool.
people can get a good sense of who I
Feel if
am.
you are. Okay.
Most
That's
of the
fine.
time it's questions about, oh, I want to know all about VSED. It's like, great,
Yeah.
let's have a
That's
talk. Oh, I want to know how to get to Switzerland. Fine. Let's have a
cool.
talk.
That's great.
So,
Oh, so that's such a beautiful wealth of information because I mean, like I don't know any of that stuff. That's not my specialty. And so I
mhm,
love it that there are people that they just know all that stuff and that's their specialty. So cool.
yeah.
That's you. Wow,
Yeah.
this was a really great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you
thank you very
so much.
much.
Yeah.